Hey Tui, you know what I just realized? No, not that. You see, I have spent over a year speculating about the Jungle Cruise and coming up with all these fan theories about the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, but I still haven't really explained what the SEA is. You know what, little buddy? You are right. Better late than never. Welcome to Teacup for One. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees. Guys, the Jungle Cruise film is finally out. That's right, after over a year of speculating that this would be the movie to kick off an epic brand new Disney cinematic universe, all based around the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, I can now finally say, I still think I'm right. Now, if you haven't seen Jungle Cruise yet, don't worry, I'm not going to get into any spoilers for the film until the second half of the video, because first, I figured it was high time that I give a clear-cut, simple explanation into what the Society of Explorers and Adventurers actually is. Because I think the Society is starting to get on more people's radar now that the Jungle Cruise film has actually been released. So, first things first, what is the SEA? I always describe SEA in my SEAverse videos as an Imagineering backstory that ties together Disney park attractions in Disney parks from around the world. Specifically, attractions that aren't already tied to pre-existing films. So, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers is a secret society that has a slew of colorful members who are all explorers. And those members and their explorations are the things that provide backstories for some of Disney's most popular attractions. Now, this is the thing about the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. The SEA has a pretty rich real-life history just in terms of the Imagineering backstory that made the SEA a thing in the parks. But it also has an equally rich in-universe backstory. So anytime you get to talking about the SEA, it's easy to get lost in a sea of facts. Pun intended. So, for today, I'm just going to keep things nice and simple. I'm not going to discuss or even acknowledge the Imagineering side of things that brought the SEA into being. We are just going to do a quick recap of the Society's in-universe timeline, and then explain how the Jungle Cruise film plays into all of that. So, let's Maria Von Trapp this and start at the very beginning. A very good place to start. The Society of Explorers and Adventurers was founded on August 12th, 1538 in Italy by a collection of artists, scientists, and explorers. So think of the SEA like a secret club that was started by a bunch of Renaissance men. Literally. The SEA was founded with the mandate to acquire knowledge through exploration, and it was built on 4 guiding principles: adventure, romance, discovery, and exploration. I promise not to do that again. And you know what? Those 4 guiding principles don't get nearly enough love when people are discussing the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, because I think those 4 guiding principles are the key ingredients that make any property connected to SEA, be it an attraction or a film, so engaging. Now, of course, with an organization that was founded in the 1500s, there are going to be different generations of members, but there is actually a sizable gap in the SEA timeline. And of course, when I say that there's a sizable gap, I mean that there are no existing Disney park attractions or characters to tell us what was happening with the Society during those centuries. So, we know about the origin of SEA in the 1500s through Fortress Exploration, which is a walkthrough attraction in Tokyo DisneySEA. So, Fortress Exploration is meant to be the Society's Italian Renaissance headquarters, and that's how we know the history of SEA. But there are no attractions that let us know what the Society was up to during the 17th and 18th centuries. And I'm guessing they were just really good at keeping it secret back then. But the majority of Disney park attractions that are tied into the SEA take place between the 1850s and the 1930s. Now, that's a pretty significant time period in terms of the Society's history, because that is when the SEA started to change up some of their practices. The president of the Society in the early 1800s was a gentleman named Vitale Robustelli, who's really the one that seemed to initiate all of the changes. He was the first person that expanded membership beyond Italy, and the first to include women in the Society. This time period is also noteworthy because it marks a time in the SEA's history when the society started to move away from exploration for problematic, selfish, or colonial purposes and actually began to expel members who still had those priorities on their agenda. Some significant points in the SEA timeline include 1851. Society President Vitale Robustelli inducts the society's first female member, Camellia Falco, which provides the backstory to Tokyo DisneySEA's version of Soarin'. 1899. During an expedition in Africa, rogue society member Harrison Hightower steals the Shiriki Utundu, an idol that eventually curses him and causes lightning to strike his hotel, thus giving us Tokyo's version of the Tower of Terror. 1927. Professor Garrett Reed is expelled from the society due to his desire to explore for personal profit and gain, as opposed to exploration for the betterment of humanity. He ventures into the jungle with the intent of stealing the Emerald Trinity, and when he does, the jungle eventually attacks him and devours him. In a plot very similar to the Jungle Cruise film. Again, sorry, light spoilers. I know I said I wouldn't, but whatever. So, The Curse of the Emerald Trinity is a Jungle Cruise overlay that they actually did over in Hong Kong Disneyland a couple years ago. I did the research, I just forgot it. 1928. Dr. Albert Falls, founder of the Jungle Navigation Company, mysteriously disappears, and his business is taken over by his granddaughter, Alberta Falls. And this is actually the backstory for the very recent Jungle Cruise refurb that took place in the Magic Kingdom and Disneyland. Now, those are just some of the greatest hits, but every Disney park attraction that has a connection to the SEA exists in one coherent timeline. Now, of course, let's be honest, these backstories exist solely with the purpose of supporting whatever the ride or attraction is. So some of the backstories are going to be more dramatic or engaging than others. But the key here is just acknowledging the fact that a shared universe already exists linking all of these Disney parks, rides, and attractions. And with the release of Jungle Cruise, and now having seen Jungle Cruise, I am still convinced that Disney is starting to slowly work films into the SEAverse. Okay, now this is where the video is going to get a little spoilery, so if you haven't seen Jungle Cruise yet, go see Jungle Cruise, then come back. Or if you don't care, just watch on. Regardless, you have been warned. Moving on. Okay, now first things first, let's acknowledge the elephant in the room. You are adorable. Now, in the Jungle Cruise film, they never once utter the phrase Society of Explorers and Adventurers. And in fact, the Jungle Cruise movie has next to nothing to do with the established backstory for the Jungle Cruise attraction in the Magic Kingdom and in Disneyland. And believe it or not, that is actually why I'm convinced that the Jungle Cruise film is working towards a SEAverse. First and foremost, the Jungle Cruise film exists in the same universe as the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, and that is not a fan theory, that is not wishful thinking, it is cold, hard, scientific fact. How do we know? Because in the very first scene of the film, McGregor is giving his speech to the Society, which is not the SEA, and he acknowledges Dr. Albert Falls. Dr. Albert Falls exists in the universe of this film. Therefore, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers exists in the universe of this film. Thank you, good night. Nope, I have more. Now, just to clarify, yes, this movie has a society. Yes, it is a society that Dr. Albert Falls is somehow affiliated with, but it is not the Society of Explorers and Adventurers. How do we know? Because the Society of Explorers and Adventurers is a secret society. Membership is seemingly very exclusive. There's only one photo of all the society members together at any given point, and it was taken in 1899, and it only depicts 8 individuals. The society that we see in the film has way more than 8 individuals, and those snobs are not trying to be secretive. They want everyone to know that they are an elite, exclusive club. Next, the society we see in the film does not uphold any of the values that SEA had in place by the 20th century. You know, by the time the 1900s rolled around, the Society of Explorers and Adventurers had been welcoming women into the ranks for almost half of a century. So the disrespect that the society members in the film had for Lily would not fly. Plus, the SEA would not turn down Lily's proposal. They would support her and they would help her, because everything that Lily is fighting for in this film is completely in line with SEA's mandate by the 20th century to explore for the betterment of humanity. And I don't know if that's actually written down anywhere, but like if you piece together all of the society members that existed during that time period, like they were trying to help people. And finally, there's a sign plastered to the outside of the building that outright tells us that they are the Royal Anthropological and Diverse Adventures Society, or RADAS, which is not nearly as cool an acronym as SEA. You hear RADAS, you just imagine a theater school full of British acting snobs who have better careers than me. So the society we see in the film, or RADAS, is much more in line with the types of people that SEA actively kicks out. People who explore for personal profit and gain. So all this is to say that I believe the Jungle Cruise film takes place in the same universe as the SEA. And if we see a sequel to Jungle Cruise, that will be when the SEA reaches out to Lily to recruit her as a new member. Now, whether or not we'll actually get a Jungle Cruise sequel will probably realistically depend on box office returns and critical success. But what I think is really smart about this movie is that it can stand on its own. It didn't jump too fast into world building for a big cinematic universe, but it did plant the seeds. And the main reason that I am still convinced that this is the case is because of that SEA timeline and how Jungle Cruise fits into it perfectly. The movie takes place in 1916, which was a pretty quiet year in terms of the pre-established SEA lore. Dr. Albert Falls doesn't disappear until the 1920s, and the Jungle Cruise that we know and love from the theme parks doesn't happen until the 1930s. Plus, remember that all of those flashback scenes to the Spanish expedition are taking place in the 1550s, very shortly after SEA was founded in Italy. So all of the scenes that take place in Spain in 1556 are happening just a stone's throw away from the original chapter of SEA. So let's just call a spade a spade. Jungle Cruise is essentially an SEA movie without being an SEA movie. It takes place in the two time periods that are most relevant to the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, the 1500s as well as the turn of the 20th century. The characters are very reminiscent of the types of characters that we've already seen as members of the Society of Explorers and Adventurers, so people with cool animal sidekicks who want to explore the world for the betterment of humanity. And the entire plot of Jungle Cruise is really just a rehash of plots that we've seen tied to more than one SEA attraction. Namely, a corrupt explorer goes out and ends up finding themselves cursed or punished by a supernatural entity tied to the culture that they tried to appropriate or steal from. You know, it's all SEA. Not to mention that the movie is grounded in those four guiding principles. It's giving us adventure, romance, discovery, and innovation. So really what I'm saying is, I'm going to be making a lot more videos about the SEAverse, so stay tuned. And this, my friends, concludes yet another episode of Teacup for One. Now, let me know in the comment section down below, do you also believe that Jungle Cruise takes place in the same universe as the SEA? And if you want to be the first to know when I release more videos theorizing about the Disney SEAverse, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you haven't subscribed already. If you haven't subscribed already, it is super easy. All you have to do is click on my face. Thanks for joining me again today, everyone. My name is Matt, and I have 2 degrees, and that's the T cup for one. Go away.